Good morning, afternoon, or evening, folks, and welcome to Cast of All Trades. I'm your host, Orion Siebert. In this episode, I'm going to share with you 8 meta skills, skills that magnify other skills or aspects of your life that will make learning and living exponentially easier. You're probably already familiar with many of these meta skills, but haven't thought of them as skills or as such. By thinking of these things as skills, you can improve them, thus improving your quality of life in the process. So, meta skills, what are they? These are skills that will magnify your other skills, and they're commonly associated with soft skills, or things that you can transfer from one domain to another, such as public speaking. It's considered more of a soft skill because it's something that isn't necessarily something you can't necessarily grade on a scale, but it's something that you can take from one domain to another. You need public speaking as an engineer, as you're giving a presentation on why your offer should be taken. You need public speaking if you're a teacher, as you're teaching the youngins about whatever topic you're trying to teach them. That's an example of a soft skill that could probably also be a meta skill, but mostly a soft skill. The following 8 are meta skills. These are skills that are designed to amplify other aspects of your life, whether those be skills or just other things you have to do from day to day. So, diving into the first one, learning how to learn is the most evident, the most self-evident meta skill that people should probably want to learn how to do. Because learning how to learn means that you're going to be better at learning new skills. And by being better at learning new skills, that means you're better at doing other things. You're better at picking up new skills that you might need for a job, for a hobby, or for whatever else you want to do. There's a couple things that encompass this learning how to learn, but in general, it's knowing how to use different learning tools. So that could be learning how to use YouTube videos as learning tools, learning how to use online courses properly, learning how to use books, learning some different study techniques, learning just a couple different ways to do things that can apply to a wide range of skills and activities you might be doing. Part of learning how to learn is being able to figure out what's going to be effective, not just according to research, but also what you tend to perform well at or better at. For example, if you have many options for how to learn something, such as, say, you can go in person to a community ed course, or you can do online courses, or you have a book that you can pick up and work from that. Being able to figure out what's going to work best for me is part of this meta skill of learning how to learn. It's being able to look at your options and know, I'm probably going to do well with this resource. I'm not going to do as well with this other resource, and be able to pick and choose what exactly you're going to use. Moving on to the second meta skill that's going to be good at amplifying your other skills in your life, and this is for sure a skill that I believe that everyone desperately needs to know how to do. 2 and 3 for sure are skills that I believe above any other. People need these skills because I have seen too many people going about without this, and it irritates me so much. Skill number 2 would be planning, because to fail to plan is to plan to fail. An effective plan can cut your learning time down drastically. Are you going to dive headfirst into a thing without knowing what the heck you're doing? A lot of people do that, surprisingly, and they expect, I'm going to get great results just because I said I'm going to go do this thing, but I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. Instead, it's good to take some time to sit down and actually make a plan. Remember that oftentimes plans will not go exactly as you hoped, and that's just fine. A plan is there to act as a set of guide rails or set of guidelines to say, this is the direction I'm going in. This is the tools, this is the resources, this is the things I'm going to do that are going to hopefully take me from point A to point B in the path of least resistance as possible. Often it never works out like that. I don't know if I've ever had any plan that I've made for any project go off perfectly without a hitch, because it just never happens. Before you go in to try to learn something, you often don't know what you really need to know. You don't know what you're missing. You might have some ideas here and there of, okay, I should probably look out for this thing, but you're not going to know about the unknown unknowns. They're unknown unknowns for a reason. You don't have any idea that they're going to come up. But that doesn't mean that planning is ineffective. By having a plan, it means that you know this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, this is the goal, but not the point of planning is not to make a plan that you're going to adhere to without fail, that it's going to be the one plan you have for the rest of your life. This is the only thing I'm going to do ever. The point of the plan is to have a direction to work in, and then to adjust here and there as you figure out, oh, like I tried doing this thing, it didn't work out so well, but maybe I can readjust and keep going. So, yeah, planning for sure, a meta skill. It's very important nowadays. Sort of built into that is meta skill number 3, time/priority management. Most people call it time management. I hate that term because we all have 24 hours in a day. You're not going to manage time to say, oh, suddenly I have 26 hours, or oh, I become much more efficient. So now I have 26 hours, or I do things in 23 hours instead. No, instead, I prefer to call it priority management because, well, you're managing your priorities. Like I said, everyone has 24 hours in a day. What are you going to do with that time? That is managing your priorities. You're going to decide, I'm going to set aside time to go and do this thing. You have made that thing officially a priority. And if you don't know your priorities of what you're doing and you're just living life on autopilot, you're going to waste a hell of a lot of time. Because if you were letting people throw things at you to say, oh yeah, don't forget to do this, don't forget to do that, don't forget to do these things that, sure, they may be important, but they're not, oh, what's the proper term for this? Oftentimes these things that are thrown at you, they're urgent but not important, or they're treated as urgent but not important. Instead, by focusing on the things that are actually important, you're going to make progress on things that you really care about. Make it the things you care about a priority in your life. You're not going to make much progress in learning your desired skills if you don't spend time with it. It doesn't have to be much time, but frequent, regular, short bursts of time dedicated to your craft will make a difference. All it takes is about 20 hours to become generally proficient in a skill. That's 30 minutes a day for 40 days. I think most people can do that, even if they say, oh no, I don't have any time at all. Like, I'm too busy to do these things. Really? Look at your phone, see how much time you spend on all of the apps, see how much time you spend on social media. I'm pretty sure the average amount of time that people spend is somewhere in the range of 3 to 4 to 5 hours a day on social media. I'm going to guess that you don't intentionally go into that thinking, oh yes, I'm going to dedicate 3 to 4 to 5 hours a day on social media, looking at pictures or looking at other people's glamorous lives while I rot away doing my own other things. Instead, make it a priority to dedicate just a little bit of time every day to go and do these things that you really want to do, to become the person you want to become. Because everything takes dedication, everything takes prioritization. If you don't have your priorities set straight, other people will make your priorities for you, and they're often not going to match with what you really want. So, moving on to meta skill number 4. It's one that I've briefly touched on in number 2 with planning, but problem solving. Your problem solving ability will enhance your planning capabilities. When you have a plan set up, things are going to go wrong. I said that already. That's where problem solving comes in. If you can solve problems, you're going to go far. And everything you do, you're going to run into problems. Life is literally just about going forward until you run into a problem and then deciding, how am I going to solve this problem? It's either going to be learn how to roll with the punches and solve it, or crumple and fail and ultimately surrender and do nothing about it. Likely things aren't going to go perfectly on your first try. How many attempts did it take for you to get up and start walking as a kid? And did you just surrender when, oh, you tried one time and then, oh, I fell down, I guess I'm crawling for the rest of my life? No, that's stupid. People are meant to be problem-solving creatures. That's often where we get our most satisfaction anyways, when we find a problem that we want to solve and then we go out and try a bunch of things, fail a bunch of times, and then after a couple, 100 attempts at times, maybe even a couple thousand, such as with Thomas Edison and the light bulb. He tried tens of thousands of attempts until he got a functioning light bulb that would last a long time. He didn't think of those first 10,000 tries as absolute failures. He considered them steps, going one step at a time, slowly but surely, until he eventually came to a solution that worked, that he wanted. Problem solving is going to take you far in life by being able to learn how to deal with problems that come at you and figuring out, okay, this is the problem that I'm facing. This is the root of that problem. How am I going to solve it? you're going to be able to get far in not just your generalist educational life, but in your personal and professional life as well. So there's that. Problem solving. Number 5, creative thinking. This skill goes hand in hand with problem solving abilities, as creative thinking is considered the ability to come up with new ideas, often spawned from other ideas or experiences. And you kind of need creative thinking to come up with new ideas and solutions that you can use for your problem solving abilities. So these two kind of go hand in hand, but I consider them two separate things, because creative thinking doesn't necessarily involve problem solving, but problem solving almost always involves some level of creative thinking. And we actually see this with Nobel Prize winners, where most Nobel Prize winners are generalists. They're some of the most creative people that you can come across. And they come up with an idea, often at the intersection of at least two seemingly unrelated or unconcerned ideas, or ideas, skills, topics, anything really. A great example of this is a guy named Herbert Simon. He's a Nobel Prize winner in economics in 1978, and he was widely known by his peers as a Renaissance man. He made major contributions in the worlds of computer science, AI, psychology, philosophy, economics, and more. He was also proficient as a pianist, a composer, an artist, and a chess player, and he attributed many of his insights to his varied interests, coming together to create a new, novel solution or idea for whatever he was trying to do at the time. By connecting ideas across multiple disciplines, you'll be able to come up with more new, novel ideas, and in doing so, likely improving your other skills much faster. We do this already. X is like doing Y, but slightly differently. We see this in the movie The Karate Kid, not the older ones, one of the newer ones, pretty sure, where the kid is working with the master, and he's being forced to do the same movements repeatedly of take off the hoodie, put the hoodie on the ground, pick up the hoodie, put the hoodie back on, do that repeatedly over and over and over again. Finally, the kid's about to give up. He says, "You're not teaching me karate, you're not teaching me kung fu, you're not teaching me how to fight, how to do these things." It's at that point that the master steps up and tells the kid, "Do it again." And as the kid is about to reach down to pick up the hoodie, the master attacks and strikes him in a way where the kid is already in the pose to defend against it. Next step, he picks up the hoodie and ends up in another stance. The master attacks again, but the kid is already in position from that training that he did. By applying one thing to another, like one skill to another, through creative thinking, through creative means, you're able to learn things much faster. Moving on to meta skill number 6, critical thinking. So this is the ability to question, to analyze, and interpret ideas, concepts, while trying to minimize your personal biases. In essence, it's nuance, a skill that is deeply lacking in our world today, and I'm certain that you'll see this for anyone who spends any amount of time on social media, where the world is just blasting out extreme takes on everything, left and right, where it seems like no one on the internet who people can hear from has a nuanced view on things. Oftentimes we just hear about the extremes because the extremes are what are popular, the extremes get attention. Like, you're only going to hear about the worst of the worst, or the best of the best, although typically less of the best, because people tend to click towards more negative things, more bad things. It's an interesting psychological thing, not going to go into that now. But generally, we live in a very polarizing world nowadays, where people don't have nuance, or they seem to lack the skill of nuance and critical thinking in things, where people will gladly side with their party, side with their team, because this is the team I've been with my entire life. Therefore, I'm not going to look too deeply into it, but I will look at the enemy teams in extreme detail and point out all their flaws, and then proceeding to ignore those same flaws or similar flaws in their own team and in their own parties or whatever things that they support. In essence, it's being able to take a step back and analyze, what is this about? Like, what are the small details in here that people aren't considering? And what are the things that I've taken as fact that might not be as fact, as just might not be true at all? So I want to go into a bit why nuance is helpful in life and in skills development. And it's in the sense that you want to know if what you're learning or what you're doing is true/real. And how can you know the difference? Religion is a great example of this because, well, oftentimes people who are born and raised into a religion, they will, they're taught this is what's true, this is what's real, believe these things, this is we have the truth here, we're going to show you all the good stuff, and that anyone who says anything negative or bad about what we do or about our organization or about any of our leaders or any of this, that isn't to be believed. And it's instantly polarizing, where you're raised in a group, in a society that says we are true, we are right, we are good, and other people, they don't have the truth. What they say is wrong on certain things. And well, this is certainly this example is certainly polarizing, where for sure not every religion is like this. Not every religion is going to say, oh, we have the truth and everyone else is wrong. But it's an example that has merit to it, because throughout history we have seen this example play out, where there are massive organizations of people. The Crusades is a good example of this, where the Crusaders believed that, oh, we are doing a holy, this is a holy war in the name of God, and we hold what is right and what is true. And oftentimes people did not, those participating in it probably did not look into the nuance of, is what we're doing really good? Is what we're doing what we should be doing? Are we living by the examples that we have read in the Bible or in the scriptures or whatever you want to call it? And while we may not have a modern day crusades of going out and demanding that people join your religion or die, we still see a lot of this, where we might laugh and mock at one other religion or one other group or cult or whatever you want to call it. I know a lot of people love to point, laugh, and mock at Scientology, but then when they're the thing that they're pointing, laughing, and mocking at in Scientology, they refuse to turn the lens back in on themselves to say, oh wait, they're doing this thing that I think is funny, strange, or weird, but my group, my organization, my thing that I'm a part of has done a lot of very similar things, but they don't acknowledge that. It's is that it's a lacking of critical thinking and nuance in our lives. So by developing your critical thinking skill, you're going to be able to look at not just what other people are doing, but look at yourself, look at the organizations you associate with, look at everything around you, and be able to think to yourself, what is true about this? What is real about this? What is underlying things? What is there? And by developing nuance, you're going to be you're not going to be as polarizing in the world, which has its pros and cons, certainly. But I like to believe that people want to be more informed, that people want to be more... I want to believe that people enjoy nuance, but who knows? Perhaps I'm wrong about that. Moving on to skill number 7, meta skill number 7, that is simplifying. This is getting to the heart of the matter. What is your clear and specific end goal? Don't make things more complicated than you have to. Figure out the bare minimum you'll need to get to the end result. And don't make it any more complicated than you have to. A good example of this is people who want to learn a musical instrument for the first time. Most people have a very vague goal of, I want to learn how to play the piano, I want to learn how to play the violin, I want to learn how to play the guitar. That's probably the most common, wanting to learn how to play the guitar. By having that vague goal of, I want to play the guitar, they often go get a guitar, they don't really make a plan, they just sit down, pull up some YouTube videos, and then start strumming for a while. Then they'll decide, oh, okay, well, no, they often won't even decide this. They'll often just set the guitar aside, and maybe they'll touch it again in 6 to 12 months, and they'll never really learn how to do anything, because every time they step away, they're forgetting how to do all the chords that they learned, how to do the fingering, how to do any of that stuff on playing the guitar. But those who are successful in learning how to play the guitar, they often have a specific end goal of, this is what I want to play. I want to know how to play this song. And oftentimes, a good example of this is many people want to learn how to play a recent popular song, or maybe their favorite song on the guitar. And a majority of pop songs, they just have a few chords. You might have to learn 3, 4, 5 chords. you don't have to learn every single chord on the guitar in order to learn how to play it if all you want to play is like a couple pop songs. And a large majority of popular music today you can play with just, I want to say it's like 5 to 7 different chords, and it's often like just the same 3 chords repeating over and over and over again, and then learning how to sing a little bit on top of that. It's a much simpler, much more specific end goal than just saying, I'm going to learn to play the guitar, by saying, I want to learn how to play, now instantly all popular songs are fading from my mind, of course, but instead saying, I want to learn how to play this one very specific song on the guitar, like just a simple version of it, then awesome. You have a roadmap. Well, you have an end goal. You can make a plan. You can make a roadmap. You can decide, am I going to go get guitar lessons? Am I going to go learn everything on YouTube? Do I have a friend who might be willing to teach me? Am I going to go to like a community ed course where everyone brings their guitar and it's sitting around the campfire playing a bit of music and just learning to pick things up from them? It's by simplifying things down to saying, this is what I want to do, by having a very clear and specific end goal, by getting to the heart of what you want to do, you're able to cut out all the BS that doesn't really matter. Are you going to need this one very specific chord that no one ever uses except for in 2 very specific classical pieces that you're never going to play anyways? No, you don't need to learn that. You don't need to learn a bunch of stuff that people say, oh, but you're not a real guitarist if you don't know how to do XYZ thing. Does it matter so long as you can play the stuff that you want to play? So I'm not someone who's on social media much, but even I have heard of there's a meme that I hear about more frequently than basically any other, thanks to a lot of the podcasts I listen to, and it's called the midwit meme. And so to describe it, it's basically a bell curve where on the left you have the total beginner, the loser who doesn't basically the total beginner who doesn't know anything. And I'll use a productivity example for this, since this is where I hear it most, where for productivity, the guy on the left end says, I use Apple Notes and Google Drive for all my organization stuff. In the middle, you have the large majority of the bell curve, where it's like people trying to be the most productive, where they say, I use Evernote for this, I have an Obsidian Vault or a Notion tree that connects all my ideas, and they have 5 to 10 to 20 different productivity apps they bunch together. And finally, at the right end, you have the Master Jedi, is often what the person's portrayed as, where they say, I use Apple Notes and Google Drive to organize everything. And it's always as simple as that, it's often as simple as that across basically any domain, where it's oftentimes the beginner who just wants to do something very simple, should not get caught up in all the messiness that people in the middle are trying to, they say, I want to be the most productive, therefore I must have all of the things, I must make it complicated in order to get the result I want, when really, oftentimes, to get the result that you want, just requires you to be very clear, very specific, and keep things simple. Moving into, last but not least, the 8th meta skill. This one, a lot of people might not consider it a skill, but for sure, this is a skill, and it is one that you need to train if you want to accomplish any of this. This is by far the most important skill here, as everything else hinges on your ability to control yourself. Indeed, the 8th meta skill is the skill of self-control. And you can hack this in yourself to some extent, where oftentimes people like to procrastinate, and there are a few tricks that you can use to actually get back to doing the things that you really want to do. What do people do when they're procrastinating? They're often doing something that's slightly less painful or slightly less activation energy. That's what I like to think of it as, than the thing that they actually want to go do, that skill that they're putting off. So when you're procrastinating, you are more likely to do things that you consider to be fun. If you're pushing stuff off, then go find something harder to do so you can put that off by doing the skill that you actually want to do. If you're procrastinating, a good example of this is, let's go back to the guitar thing. If you're procrastinating going and practicing guitar by going and cleaning your house, because you consider cleaning your house something that's slightly easier than going and practicing guitar, then you have to be willing to force yourself to say, I am procrastinating. I am doing that by going and cleaning my house. What is something more difficult that I don't want to do that I can procrastinate by going and practicing guitar? Uh, let's say going and doing your taxes. Go sit down and start doing your taxes for a bit. Then you'll realize, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm going to procrastinate by going and playing guitar for a while. It's sort of it takes a bit of mental gymnastics, but essentially it's using procrastination to your advantage, where you're going and doing something, then purposefully procrastinating by going and doing the skill you actually want to work on and actually want to do. So, yeah, it's all about, I consider it to be all about activation energy. If you can get over the first 2 to 3 minutes of like getting over the hump of getting started and working on the skill you actually want to do, you're basically golden. I find that whenever starting is the hardest part, the actual act of sitting down and doing the thing feels like the hardest part. As I was working on getting the first few episodes of this podcast up and going, the hardest part for me was always just trying to get myself to sit down, work on the podcast notes, work on recording, do all this stuff. But ultimately, once I got 2 to 3 minutes in, I was having a blast. I was loving it. I was enjoying it. And I was able to, all it took was those first 2 to 3 minutes of getting through the pain and the drudgery of trying to start something for me to actually get into the stuff that's oh yeah, I enjoy doing this. This is fun. And I'm able to keep going for hours and hours and hours. But yeah, ultimately, you're not going to make much progress on anything if you can't get control of yourself and if you can't get yourself to actually do it. So, in summary, there are many skills you can choose to learn, but if you want to maximize your learning potential with skills that will improve your educational, personal, and professional life, really consider these 8. Learning how to learn, planning, priority management, problem solving, creative and critical thinking, simplifying, and self-control. If you've enjoyed this episode of Cast of All Trades, I have 3 super easy things I'd like you to do that would mean the world to me. 1, subscribe to the show, wherever you listen to podcasts, so you don't miss our next episode. 2, while you're in your podcast app of choice, give this show a 5-star review. It helps us reach more people and in turn, help us change lives through generalism. Finally, share this episode with a friend or two, someone you think would gain a lot from the show. Word of mouth is the best way to help a podcast grow, and if your friend likes the show, they'll thank you for introducing them to it. It's a win-win. With all that said, best of luck, tradesmen, and I'll talk to y'all later. Ciao.